I was looking over these books and I was like, which one of these is happy? Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Just Another Struggling Writer, the beleaguered author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, I've got a fun video for you today. I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag, my first mid-year freakout tag on YouTube. But that brings me to the first subject I want to talk to you about. It is my 1-year anniversary on YouTube. Yay! Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. This has been such a fun little hobby of mine that I've developed. I didn't really think that I would take to it like this, but it has been really, really fun. And I'm just so grateful to everyone who has been on this journey with me. In just a year, I have grown my channel to now 58 subscribers. And while that doesn't sound like a lot probably to many of you, that's a lot to me. I didn't expect anyone to be interested in anything that I had to say. I was really just doing it because I don't have anyone in my real life that I can talk to about books and writing and all of this. So I just did it to kind of get my thoughts out into the void, and y'all have responded, and that makes me just feel so incredibly good and like it's a worthwhile endeavor. And again, it's just really fun too. It is a hobby that I'm truly enjoying, and you guys are a part of that. So I want to thank you so much for being here and supporting this channel. And I had mentioned back in February that my next subscriber goal was 50, and we blew past that before I even had a chance to mention it. So now I am aiming for 100. And so every time you guys watch my video or like or leave a comment, it is really helping my channel grow, and I just appreciate it so much. All right, with that sappy shit out of the way, let's get on to the next item on this agenda, which is my reading plans for the next 3 weeks are probably going to be put on hold because the Olympics are starting. I am a huge athletics nerd. I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but I really do love athletics in general, not just sports, but like any kind of feat of athleticism. And so with that in mind, the Olympics are like my Olympics. I just get really excited for them every year. I pretty much drop everything that I'm doing and watch almost every sport. It just consumes my life. I'm watching it all day long. So I don't really anticipate getting a ton of reading done starting on Wednesday, which is the day this video is going up. I'm going to do my best to get some reading done in the creases. There are going to be times where I can't possibly be watching the Olympics. I could watch it on my phone. Anyway, I would expect a major slowdown from me in the reading department. And I'm going to do my best to make sure that my writing doesn't suffer in those moments. I can probably be taking notes while watching events, but reading isn't really something I can do and pay attention. So that's a little disclaimer coming up starting on the day this video will come out. So if you're looking forward to any weekly vlogs or reviews, I would not for the next couple of weeks. Okay, and that finally brings us into the mid-year freakout tag. Now, I watched a couple of videos of a couple of my favorite YouTubers doing this tag, and some of the questions varied. So I kind of compiled them into a list that I liked. It ended up being 15 questions. So this may not be exactly the tag you're used to or the ones that you have seen so far, but it's mine. So without further ado, question 1. That, without question, is Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. I just read this last month, and I know it's been out for a while, but it was revelatory to me. I really, really enjoyed it, and I have found that the longer I've sat on it, the more obsessed with it I have become. I love the magic system, and I think that's probably one of the first things you'll hear people talk about when they discuss this series is the magic system. They're not wrong. It's great. It's unique. It's fascinating, and it's got kind of a real world analog that makes it a little bit easier to kind of hook into your head. But beyond that, I also love the characters. I do. Sanchia herself has such an incredible journey. Her relationship with her magic, her relationship with the world that has brought her up, her relationship with Clef, who I wasn't a super huge fan of at first, but he grew on me so much that I just can't describe it, how like he unlocked my heart. Even some of the side characters who I actually didn't like that much, I appreciate the depth and the role they played in the story. Foundry Side to me is a masterpiece, and if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do as soon as possible. Question 2 brings me to my other 5-star read of this year so far, Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the sequel to Godkiller, which came out last year and was excellent in many, many ways. And I really found that Sunbringer improved on Godkiller in the one way that I found it lacking, which was some of the characters were just a little bit, they didn't work for me. In Sunbringer, they really came into their own for me, and I appreciated them all so much, and all of the individual personal journeys, like internal journeys that they're going on, as well as the development of the story. I have heard criticism that this book doesn't really accomplish much, but I could not disagree more. I think you have to really value where the characters are and where and what they are doing to appreciate this book, but also the ending. The way this ending gut punched me, I cannot describe. I will link my reaction video in the cards to reading this ending if you want to know a little bit more. But again, another book that I highly recommend. Question 3. That is so easy. That is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the third and final installment of her Between Earth and Sky trilogy. My relationship with this series has been a little up and down, but at the end of the last book, I was all in, and I still am. And the fact that Shiala appears to play a major role in this book, she's on the cover, has me really hyped, because Shiala has been kind of the heart and soul for me of this series. And in the second book, she kind of takes a step back, which was a little bit of a bummer. So the idea that she's going to have a big arc in this one, I'm really excited for. I have got to get to it soon. Question 4. I don't have an answer for this, unfortunately, because I don't actually look at books that are coming out. I don't really look at release schedules or look ahead, because I am so far behind on reading other books. I have talked about this a few times, but there was about a decade in my life where I just wasn't reading that much, and as a result, I missed out on a lot of books that are considered like staples of the genre or classics. I still haven't read a single Brandon Sanderson book. I haven't read much of Robin Hobb, even though I want to. So I'm just so behind on reading that I don't feel like I have time to look forward as much. So I don't really anticipate releases. So I don't really have an answer for this. Question 5. For me, this one is probably Starling House. I hated it. I'm so sorry I did. I was looking forward to it. I was kind of intrigued by the kind of gothic vibes, the spooky old manor, the fighting of magical creatures, the idea that only one person is keeping these monsters from coming into the world. But the execution really was lacking for me. I did not like the main character at all. I thought she was horrible to everyone around her, even the people she claimed to love most, and then she just gets away with it pretty much. She suffers really no consequences, and the romance was just weird and unnecessary, and the ending, just like the magical elements, just didn't really feel well integrated. I'm so sorry. I know this was a really popular pick at the beginning of this year, but for me it was a big miss. Question 6. And I just mentioned it, but for me, this is Fevered Star, which is the second book in the Between Earth and Sky trilogy by Rebecca Roanhorse. I mentioned when I read it that Black Sun was intriguing in a lot of ways, but also really disappointing in a lot of ways. I didn't like half of the POV characters out of 4, and the reveal at the end wasn't really much of a reveal. It was very well telegraphed, so leaving me feeling like I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a big reveal or not. So I didn't really have high hopes for Fevered Star, but but I was so intrigued by the setting and two of the main characters that I decided to go ahead and pick it up. And for a lot of the book, it was definitely like not my favorite, probably around a 3-star at best. But the ending, the ending was so good. The ending was excellent. And the ending was everything I wanted. Yeah, that put me on the hype train for Mirrored Heavens for sure. Question 7. I am going to go with an author who is not new, that is new to me, is T. Kingfisher. And for this, I'm using Nettle and Bone, even though I haven't actually read this one yet. T. Kingfisher has been a revelation to me. I got Nettle and Bone from the library last year, and then my dog ate it. So I didn't get a chance to read it, but I did have to buy it. But the first part of the book that I did manage to read before it got chewed on was so good that I immediately started picking up other T. Kingfisher books. I just love her writing style. I do. It's just so immersive and kind of cozy, but not quite. Kind of dark, but not quite. It kind of nestles in a space between cozy and dark, which is so intriguing. And I love her fantasy stories. I am kind of on a personal side quest this year to read as much of T. Kingfisher as I can. She is definitely the author I've read the most this year. I do need to finally get back into this one though. Question 8. I don't really do these. Maybe Sanchia from Foundry Side. I do love her a lot, but yeah, I don't really do fictional crushes. Question 9. I really pondered this because there's so many great characters that I've read from, but when I was reviewing the books that I read this year, the one that stands out to me the most is Alex Stern from What Moves the Dead, and the sequel is What Feasts at Night. I can't remember what the series is called, by T. Kingfisher, which is a novella retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, which is one of my most favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories. And while the direction of the story itself ended up being a little bit of a disappointment, just because I had read a very similar book just like 3 months before, I would have to say when I think of characters that stand out, Alex Stern is right up there. Question 10. That has to be The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the third and final installment of her Broken Earth trilogy. And yeah, how can you not cry? This series elicited a very visceral reaction from me from start to finish. It was so gut-wrenching to read. It was so, like, it made me feel so tense inside. There were moments where I had to brace myself before I picked up these books. And The Stone Sky was no different. And the way that it culminates was just so perfect. Every single character in this book got the ending that I wanted for them in this book. And just the journey that our main character goes on, how can you not cry? I mean, it's just so emotional damage. That's the only way I can say it. It really, while this book I feel was in many ways the weakest just because there wasn't as much plot, N.K. Jemisin still really, really nailed the ending. Question 11. I struggled with this one as well because I have found that not a lot of the books that I read make me happy. I don't really gravitate towards anything particularly cozy or warm feeling, I have found, which is so funny because I always say I don't like to be depressed in my spare time, and then I was looking over these books and I was like, which one of these is happy? Which one of these made me happy? So I interpreted it this way. I reread The City of Brass this year and I felt pleased afterwards because the first time that I read it, I think in like 2018, but the circumstances in which I read it did not favor me liking it. And so I think that kind of colored my opinion of it. And so that's why I decided to reread it this year. And while it's still not a new favorite, I would say, I enjoyed it far more on the reread. And so that made me happy because I do love Middle Eastern fantasy. I do love Nairi, and I love Dara. I love him. I don't know what that says about me. Please don't make judgments. But so it made me happy that I was able to enjoy this one more on my reread. Question 12. I don't actually have an answer for this either because I don't watch TV or movies really that much. I don't. I don't have time, unfortunately. I don't have time. So I don't know. It could be anything. Recommend me stuff to watch, something I could put on and enjoy, book-related things. That would make me happy. Question 13. That would probably be Swordheart by Kingfisher, and I'm kind of cheating because I read Swordheart at the tail end of last year, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it until after the new year turned over. So the review did come out in 2024, even if I read the book in 2023. And I loved that for a lot of reasons, because I got to talk about Swordheart, which I loved. And it also introduced me to Kingfisher properly. And it was also the first video on my channel that broke 100 views, which was a huge deal for me at the time. I couldn't believe it. Even though the engagement wasn't, very high, just seeing that number tick up was awesome for me and made me feel like, okay, people do care about what I have to say in my book reviews. So for that reason, that would definitely be my favorite. Question 14. That's easy because I just got my very first Fairy Loot edition. I finally got off the waiting list of Fairy Loot. It's been like over a year since I signed up. And this month the book was The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song. And holy shit, she's gorgeous. End papers, just beautiful, beautiful end papers. Holding this book in my hands makes me wonder, do people actually read their Fairy Loot editions? Or am I going to have to get a copy from the library so I can actually read this book? Because I don't want to ruin it. It's so pretty. Yeah, it's my first Fairy Loot, so I know people who have been long subscribers are like, yeah, it's fine. But for me, it's just like, it's so pretty. And I'm like petrified that my dog is going to eat it. So I'm like keeping it very high up on the shelf. And finally, question 15. Truthfully, there are just so many that I could probably spend an hour talking about them. But the one I am determined to finally read for real is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I started this book, I think, in like April when I was in the middle of a slump and I was really struggling to read physically. And so I unintentionally put it down and never came back to it at about 25%. I really enjoyed what I was reading. I love the voice. I love Gideon. I love just the snark and the irreverence and all of that. And I can't wait to find out like what the hell the story is about. I get like Gideon's role in it, kind of like how she was like looped into this event, but I have no idea like what the end game is or where it's going. And I love that kind of like what's going on here. And I think I am probably going to start fresh from the beginning. I had been kind of wondering if I should just pick up where I left off or if I should start over from the beginning. And I think when I do pick this up again, which I will before the end of the year, I'm going to start fresh and reread the beginning. But this definitely on my list. I have got to read this. I keep looking at it and going, why am I not reading this book? And it's just worked out that way. But of all the books I want to read this year, this is number one on the list. And that is everything. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. My first mid-year freakout tag. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, thank you so much for subscribing. It is so appreciated. Like I mentioned before, it just makes me feel like I'm not just shouting into the void. And it just makes it really fun to continue to make these videos. So again, so appreciated. Thank you so much. In my next video, I will have a writing vlog for you, and I'm really excited about it because it is actually going well for a change. So I hope you look forward to it, and I will see you then. Bye.